Hello, my name is Amelia,
My name's Jay.
and this is the Raising Barbarians podcast, a podcast on being human.
Today we're going to talk about why we homeschool.
So why do we homeschool?
You want to know? Well, it's the only way we had ever planned to raise our children was by homeschooling. We talked about it when we first met.
Mm-hmm.
Why was that the only way you wanted to raise your children?
I had decided as soon as I knew I wanted children, I knew I wanted to homeschool them because I'm anti-state. So I definitely never wanted my kids enrolled in public schools, in government schools that espoused the idea that the government was a good thing that was helping you. So that was like the first fundamental reason why I wanted to homeschool when I was young. What about you?
Well, what about private school?
Private schools also teach that government is good.
Okay. I'm into homeschooling because I think that the public school system isn't made for the benefit of the children. It's the state schools were made for their own ends, and there's a good saying that if something's free, then you're the product. And so I didn't want my children to be the product. And I think state schools and a lot of private schools, which take a lot from the state school model, are very institutional environments that institutionalize children. They're like prisons for children. And I didn't want to take the joy out of their lives.
Yeah, I think that how miserable school is. Now, this is always a somewhat controversial subject when you talk about homeschooling. There are people who choose to homeschool who did not have a bad school experience, and you did not have the worst school experience.
No, I didn't have a great experience. I never really enjoyed school much.
Yeah. But for me, for as long as I could remember, there were always some positive things about school, but those positive things I don't look back on as things that are actually positive, like wanting to get a gold star from people in authority was probably my favorite thing about school. And I disliked almost everything else about it. It made me very anxious, and including that, getting the gold star. I like the story that I always tell, and it was funny because my son did the same thing the one time that he's had standardized testing, is that, I cried when I got like a 99th percentile on something because I didn't understand that was the highest you could get, but it was very devastating for me in that environment to not do well. So I thought of that when you said, I didn't want to take the joy out of my kid's life, thinking about, my own experience about how miserable school was for me.
Mm-hmm. And you said some people have pros and cons of homeschooling when they make these videos, and I don't really have any cons I could say about homeschooling. I know the cons people might imagine, like that their kid isn't going to get as good of an education, but I don't agree with that. I think they get a much better education.
The statistics don't bear out the idea that they would get a worse education.
Some people feel they're going to be weird, but I don't agree with that. They're not going to get socialized, which I come to expect a higher level of socialization from people who have a higher adult to kid ratio and they're not told to be quiet. And schools are very, like I said, institutional, kind of cruel environments, which make the kids more cruel and crude. And I like to control the peer group, so that's a plus of homeschooling. You control the peer group. You are who you
Surround
associate
yourself
with.
yeah.
And now our kids get surrounded with us a lot of the time, and we get to be closer with our kids. Another con is people will say you don't get to.
Just to be clear, when we say our kids get to socialize with us a lot of the times, it is also very easy and has been a big part of their life to be around lots of other kids all the time. We rarely go. I would say, maybe 2 days at the most when we don't hang out with other kids. We're usually at the playgrounds or hanging out with friends, several of which they've had since our oldest was a toddler.
Yeah, so I think you get more time. Like if you go to a homeschool thing, the kids get to really get to hang out with their friends for the full, if it's 2, 3, 4 hours. But if you go to school, you might only get, a few minutes here, a few minutes there, where you get to talk to your friends, and maybe like a 30-minute lunch or something like that. So I feel like you have less time to socialize in most school settings than you do in a homeschool environment. We're lucky enough to live on a street where other kids are being homeschooled too, so we could really let the kids go over and hang out with other homeschool kids quite a bit if we wanted to, like all day long or things like that. You really have control over learning exactly what you want to learn. Like our gym class today was learning Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which the boys are interested in. They want to learn martial arts. And so we were having to learn Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and mixed martial arts. And you wouldn't get to do that at a regular school or even most private schools necessarily. Another con people might imagine is one parent has to not work, but you could work easily. And if one parent doesn't want to work, it's just that's like a priceless thing that you get to spend time with your kids. It's a meaningful chapter of your life, and that can be viewed as a benefit too, as I've decided not to work. And it doesn't have to be, there's plenty of people, I think we know a single mother who's not well off, and she homeschools and takes care of her children, and so there are ways to figure it out.
We've known more than one single mother who homeschools and takes care of you. You have one in particular in mind.
Yeah,
I
and
know
she's
we talked about
one
it earlier.
that isn't very well off, and I don't know if the other one was well off either. She might be more well off, I don't know, but you're
There's
right.
2 others
I know who
can
you're
think
thinking
of right
now. Yep.
Oh, I don't know who you think I'm thinking of, but I'm thinking of 2 women that you wouldn't think I was thinking of because you don't know them that well, who have larger families actually.
Okay, there you
One
go.
is a family with 3 kids and one is a family with 4
So
kids.
it can be done, and not everyone always has that hardship. But for people who do, there's ways to make it happen. I think it's worthwhile.
Yeah, being a 1 income family, as far as homeschooling goes, being 1 income, having the mother at home has a variety of benefits to it, and the downside is that you don't get the money from a second income. And some people might think that mom not pursuing a career is a big downside because they enjoy their career, but excuse me.
God bless you.
Thank you. One thing I like to think about or bring up is this idea like, oh, women don't have to not work. They just don't work right now, right? The idea that I'm not going to work for the rest of my life because I'm not working while my kids are young is a great overstatement of how long it takes to raise kids. And from my perspective, and I know not everybody necessarily feels this way, from my perspective, I would be lucky if I got to raise kids for the rest of my life. That would be great for me, but that is sadly not the situation I am in. I will have to go back, not I will have to, but I will want to go back to work at one point because I can't do all of the most meaningful work that I do here raising kids because my kids will be older and I will be unlikely to have grandkids that I can dedicate sufficient enough time to compensate for wanting to contribute meaningfully.
I don't quite understand what you said there, but you could just raise kids your whole life if you'd like to.
And my point was just that raising kids doesn't take away my ability to work a job. It's just a pause, and it's not a huge part of your life. I mean, it is a huge part of your life, but there are other parts of your life where you are working.
And why do you think some people don't homeschool?
Well, some people don't like the idea of homeschooling in any way. I think that's the first, like, there's nothing appealing to them about it at all.
Just not what most people do.
Yeah, that's one of the issues. But of course, that barrier that it's like a weirdo thing to do is going away more and more. I mean, if you like take the numbers from like the 1970s, it was in the couple of thousands, and now it's in the couple of millions. And even just the past, it's increasing exponentially. It's not that it's, just a couple of years ago it was several fewer million than it is now. So it's going up very quickly, even post COVID when it saw like a really big spike. So if homeschooling being weird has been people's barrier, that barrier exists for fewer and fewer people.
And people can tell that you're a homeschooler and that your kids are homeschooled.
Yes. Yeah, but one of the things is that most of the time when we're out during homeschooler hours. Homeschoolers hold special hours. We don't like to go out on spring break.
We went out today.
Yeah, for something that we're signed up and paid for.
It's during spring break. There are no homeschool hours because kids are out during the school day.
Well, yeah, but also as a general rule, or at least as a joke, homeschoolers don't like to go to parks on holidays because there's people there ruining them. It's more crowded. And then there's a lot of, again, social dynamics that a lot of homeschoolers aren't very fond of. A lot more name calling, pushing, helicopter parenting, all these kinds of things that can be unpleasant to be around if you're not used to them.
How do you spot when other kids are homeschooled?
No.
You can't tell?
No.
They can just tell that you're a homeschooler?
I can tell because they're out during homeschool hours. If you're at the playground on a Tuesday morning at 10:30 and it's not a holiday, and you gotta.
You think if a kid's not wearing shoes, they might be a homeschooled kid? Not necessarily.
Not necessarily. No. I mean, there's a chance, but there are kids who go to regular school who wear shoes, and there's a ton of homeschool kids who wear shoes. Not the homeschool kids I hang out with, but they exist.
And you decide that you're going to homeschool when you read a book about homeschool?
So, I think when I first started reading about homeschooling and got that idea in my head, it would have been John Holt that I was reading. How Children Learn, How Children Fail, and he's got Teach Your Own, and several more. And a lot of those ideas were not so much just about. Then there's also, like, again, the anti-state stuff. Like Murray Rothbard has a book called School for Education Free and Compulsory, which is a really good title, going into the history of how states implemented compulsory schooling and how literacy rates have been dropping rapidly ever since then. But yeah, a lot of the John Holt stuff is actually just about how to be respectful towards children, and what it feels like, what it looks like, what the system does to kids in regards to learning. A lot of kids who go into school loving learning about things come out hating the idea of picking up a book or learning anything on their own for fun.
Yeah, our kids love learning and picking up books and doing worksheets and things like that. They don't always want to do that stuff, but they like it.
No, today actually, I showed my boys Jeopardy recently, and then we decided to play it today. And so we took our walk around the block that we usually take in the evening, and we played Jeopardy the whole way. And the boys thought it was a very fun game, but you know, it was competition, so I wasn't surprised that they had a nice time and enjoyed doing that.
You know, people who they wanted to be a stay-at-home mother and homeschool and stuff, but then their husband didn't want that. They wanted the kid in regular stuff and the wife to work.
Yeah, that does happen sometimes. It's nice if you're in a situation where you know when you meet each other what you want from your family life, but a lot of people, there's upsides to just knowing each other much longer than that. I mean, there are theoretically people who are meeting each other as teenagers and they both know what they want going forward, but that's probably few and far between. So those are people who were together for a long time before they started having kids, and they didn't know they would ever have to figure out those plans until they found that they did have to. So yeah, as far as why we homeschool, I would say being anti-state is one of the things, though at this point not the primary thing.
Well, I'm not anti-state.
Sure, me being anti-state is one of the things for me, not him. Wanting to be one of the primary molders of the world our children are raised in, wanting to be able to impart our own values without having to fight an uphill battle against the values they're being taught in public school is a big one. Is that fair?
Say that again?
Wanting to impart our own values and not having to fight so strongly against the values.
Or have any values. We don't feel they teach values.
Oh, they teach values.
You're right. Not the values of what I believe in, I guess.
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
In fact, a lot of the values the school teaches might be things I consider bad.
The exact opposite of what we would want our children to learn.
Opposite of values, yeah. I don't think they create closeness between family. I don't think they value family. And a lot of studies show that it's really the family that creates a lot of learning that then the school steps in and takes the credit for. They're like, we taught your kid to read. Well, your kid probably just learned to read, and if anyone taught them to read or helped them read, it was the parents.
Yes.
And there's kids who make it all the way through the school system, never learning to read.
Yeah.
So they don't want any part of that, but they want to take credit for, I don't know.
Did I send you the clip from that one podcast we've been talking about recently? He's interviewing these girls and he asked them all like a basic math question, and there's like 3 women there and none of them can do it. They came their way up through it.
It's hard sometimes to do something on the spot though. Like one time you asked me like, what's 7 minus 3, and no one could do it. Sometimes you just get asked a question.
But to be fair, we've all gone
Especially
through the public school system.
I got asked a question like that.
They were given.
On a podcast.
They weren't like.
Joe Rogan's like, "What's 2 times 5?" I'd be like.
But they were given some time. But they weren't like, "Give me the answer now." They're just like, "Let's see, 7." You know, and it wasn't like you have 3 seconds to answer the question.
Once you can't get it, that's that.
I'll admit that you're right, that it is high pressure. That's what I thought when I saw it too. But there would be a point in time at which you would be able to answer, right?
Just get it.
So one of the girls, she asked for a piece of paper to do the math problem, and in that book, The Deliberate Dumbing Down of America, they talked about how one of the goals is to make it so
What was the math problem? Do you remember? Not really.
I mean, it was let's say 64 plus 36.
It was just an addition problem.
Yeah.
It was just like two small numbers, but not the smallest, but
Yeah.
64 plus 36. So that's not the easiest. 60, just remembering the numbers is hard. 64 was 36, well, there's a 10 there. And then there's a 9, so it's 100.
Yes.
It's 100
Yeah.
there. There you go.
Yeah. So she asked for a piece of paper to solve the problem. And in that book, they were talking about how one of the deliberate dumbing down of America, they were talking about how one of the goals was to make it so that people could only do things in the context in which they learn them, right? You don't want people having this ability to take information from
Okay.
one place and use that information in another place to create, I mean, they didn't say this part, they didn't say this in words, but once you can take information and apply it generally in different and novel ways, now your thinking is a lot more out of control, right? But if you can train people so that they can only do their thinking in certain contexts, and in this case that would be you have to write down your math, right? And you can only do it this way. And I thought it was just funny because I had read that like the day I saw the video about them wanting to keep things always contextual.
Yeah, I don't know if she was trying to contextualize it. It is easier to do math when you can write it down, like any math, because then you don't have to keep, I was having to keep the
Sure.
36 plus the 64 in my head. If you just write it down, it's so much easier.
Yeah, but just two numbers.
She had asked for a desk and for them to stand up and write the problem on the board, but no, I see what you're saying.
No, I mean, I understand what you're saying.
I
She didn't need the
think a
exact
lot of
context.
times people, yes, they can't they can't uncontextualize it from like, okay, I'm learning this history lesson, and I think they try to actually sometimes like go like, hey, here's how you do it, but yeah, I don't think a lot of people can do that.
Teach our kids values. I'm not quite sure how I got to that show actually.
Anyways, you know, we get to, homeschooling's great because you get to tailor the lesson plan to exactly what your kid wants to learn. You know, we want our kids to know how to read and write and do some basic math. But then beyond that, we get to, like, if our kids are interested in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, they get to go do that. If our kids are interested in learning Latin, you know, they're not in a fancy private school, but they're getting to learn Latin. You know, we get to really, whatever we do a lesson plan around, like a book we're interested in. We did Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and we're doing like lesson plan around that, or of course, like we can incorporate religion, things like that you wouldn't be able to do in school. So it's just great. You get to have exactly the lesson plan you want. On top of that, you get to control the people, the peer group that your kids get to hang out with. You get to have a close relationship. While some people do imagine cons like weirdness or socialization or money, I don't really believe in any of the cons that someone could say that exist. So I say no cons, only pros. Highly recommend it. It makes the whole family closer, makes you closer with your children. You're bringing great joy into their life. A lot of the pros that I didn't mention are like the sadness and cruelty and boxing of the mind that you bring into your child's life. Like, people talk about bullies, but this is such a modern concept, and there is no such thing as a bully. Like, you don't want to talk about a bully at work. You might, but it doesn't make sense to talk about bullies when there is no bullies, because a bully really is, I have to go to that school with these people I have no control of and these teachers who I'm not close to, and yes, that's a situation where someone could feel bullied, but yeah, it's just really, it's been better than I could have imagined, the homeschooling. Has it been better than you thought it would be?
I know I was going to be really, really happy with homeschooling, but that ended up being true. Never has it ever occurred to us to do anything other than homeschooling. And that's actually one of the things that...
That's the only
Is-
negative, is that if it's important to you to do what you understand the majority of people are doing, and we live in a world actually that seems to really be like, oh, you're a hipster, you're doing something not many people do, congratulations, that's different. So it's actually a bonus to do something different. A lot of
No,
people,
it's got to be the right. It's got to be the right things. They can
I
only
feel
be
like
made
people
pretend.
always like that we do it, even people who don't do it. I don't feel like I've ever.
No, nobody says bad things about us for homeschooling. We haven't run into that at all.
I
We've
know I
only
would
run
really-
into people who say that they wish they could do it.
Yeah, I'm sure there's someone out there like, oh, that's terrible. But like I feel I would rattle their
Those people
cage
look
if
at
I
us.
spoke to that person and explained things. If they actually listened to me, I think they either just agree with me or their cage would get rattled and they would enjoy it, because I don't think there really is anything negative you can say about it. All right, so with that, it's off. Subscribe, like, enjoy.
Yes.